No.
And I always tell guys, anything that's shooting well,
No.
just leave it alone.
You know how many rifles have been fucked up by tinkering with them?
Yeah, I know somebody.
I
This
bet
guy.
you-
That's me.
I remember that one.
Yeah, that's a pretty common thing, though. Like you said, here you got this thing that shoots really, really good, and now you want to do what?
Yeah.
You know, the answer is leave it alone. Shoot it out.
Well, they
Wear
always
it out,
start off
get
and
another one.
they know what their answer is because they say it the same way. I have this right. They'll talk all about the rifle and how well it shoots. And then at the end of it, they say, but I really like fluting. Should I do it? And they already know the fucking answer.
Oh, that's goes the same with like plus P, and you're like, no,
Yeah.
you're there.
Yeah, it's fucking hammering the 100 feet per second up front. Yes, it's nice. Add it up front. But if you're already hammering, the difference between 2,900 and 3,000, the elk don't give a shit.
No.
Yeah,
It really
they
doesn't.
actually, I'd never seen anybody in physics class. There was no elk in physics class at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
So they really don't care.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Shoot to Hunt podcast, sanctioned by the Shoot to Hunt team based out of Post Falls, Idaho. And now, those of you listening, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. Sitting on your right hand, he's a hot listening, Starbucks drinking, target shooting, cream puff, Jake Boucher. And now, a reigning, undefending, undisputed, front-wearing, 6'5" cream ball shooting, pony riding, yard gnome, Ryan Avery.
Luke, I know you're listening right now. We need to revamp this thing.
Time.
I mean, a lot of effort was put in. You could tell there was a lot of effort put in there. It's just not. It's not doing it for me.
Mike, what am I undisputed?
Probably a lot of things.
The best garden gnome
Yeah, that's what I thought.
in the podcast
Yeah.
realm.
Yeah, you're probably
You should
right,
own
Mark.
it, man.
Probably Mark's right. Probably a lot of things. Depends on who you ask.
I think there's probably a list someplace.
There's a list. Divisive,
Yeah.
hateful, kind. You know, like that one person out there.
It's the awkward part about the fact that you love awkward situations is
I do like to throw a
Stir the
bomb
shit.
into a conversation and sit back and see what happens.
yeah.
Today, it's you know why it's odd. I figured this out. Why this is we're on a fucking Tuesday.
Is that what's throwing you off?
It's like
Because you're in a weird fucking mood.
Tuesday. I got like a lot of. I'm going on this hunt that I've already been on. I got a huge walk, and I'm fat, and I know I'm gonna have to pack out an elk.
You know,
So it's
hearing
like,
you whine about that fucking hunt, there's no basis. After you see this 320 bull and you decide to pass on it.
Yeah.
So complaining about walking back in after seeing a 320 bull, there's no merit to it.
It's called white people problems.
Well, there you go.
It is.
Yeah.
We are not. I shouldn't say. I won't say that. I'll say we are outnumbered, but we're actually even on the younger,
2 on 2.
younger versus older.
No, you're outnumbered.
I wouldn't call us younger.
Well,
really.
I'd say mid. What would we be? I'm 46.
Well, I'm not going to
so-
guess, but I'm saying so. So there's 240 to 60s and 260 to 80s.
Yeah.
Blade didn't like that.
Well, no, it's just you guys are way outnumbered.
Would it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Years of experience wise, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, there's no doubt about
Yeah.
years of experience.
I'm the layman in this
Oh,
group
I'm
for sure.
Oh, I don't think that's true. I'm on the metal stuff and build. I have no engineering mind, and we're here with a guy that builds rifle, a guy that was a mechanic for a high-end,
Yeah.
high-end bus place, and this dude we just figured out went to MI
Yeah. And he has like this wealth of information just crawling around in his head about SAAMI and metallurgy and atomic bombs affecting steel. And this is the kind of shit we're going to talk about.
Cool.
We got Mark Mace Burrows, and we have Blaine. They're the elderly gentlemen, but
You better.
The more experienced gentleman.
That's the best way to put it.
I got to say this because I prefaced this. I was asking about people to have on for barrels. People spit out all these names, and I'm thinking, man, not to your detriment, but to your defense, you have been in this game a long time. People are spouting all these other barrel companies. I just think Ace needs to get a bigger foothold out there now because you guys are putting out quality products.
We'd love to have that, of course, but at the same time, we're not looking to change our process. A lot of people do that. They get very large. They get a lot of people working for them, and then they got to sacrifice stuff to get it out. And we're just not into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the growth of any small business. At some point, it always starts off with one guy, basically, or one lady. And from there, you have to start delegating, hiring, training, and at some point, there are some things that are lost. Some are acceptable, some are not. But, yeah, if you can't keep the quality, it's Bat Machine has a lot of the same philosophy. We're adding new actions right now. We're talking about how many actions they can make per week, per month. How much can we consume from them? And, Bruce is generally of the mindset, Bruce and Daryl, that they almost don't want to make more actions. They like everything the way it is. So we just have to work within those boundaries. But definitely.
Yeah, and Mark has been in this game so long that Bruce was his Padawan.
There you go. Yeah. Bruce Thom. That Bat Machine was at one time a machinist for you. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I would feed him all the stuff that he would need he worked on the night shift, by the way, or the swing shift at that point there. They got off at like 1 a.m. or something. But
so you have the official title of sensei.
I guess. Yeah. So from that there, Bruce is a really an energetic, want to do things right, find the best way to do it, learn how to increase the speed from the best way to do it. He's always been that way. And I think I've known Bruce for over 30 years now. And it may even be a little bit longer than that. But, when I first met him, he's bringing out stuff. He was actually in high school in metal shop building a rifle. He built a rifle in metal shop. He built a 22.
Those were the days, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Now they got rid of the fucking metal shops.
Yeah.
You not even make anything in high school anymore, let alone make a gun.
I would go deer hunting after football practice, and I'd have my rifle in the back of my truck.
Fucking truck, ready to rock. Even hanging up, like in the, in the back window.
Times have changed.
And of course, I grew up in Montana, where obviously firearms are pretty much a way of kind of life over there. But I actually, in our elementary school, which had probably 150 kids in there, we had 3 or 4 of us. We actually had scabbards on our bicycles. And we would bring our guns to school, put them in the closet with the ammo, and at the end of the day, we'd take those out. There was a sawmill that was upstream. We'd go down there and shoot. If you got lucky, there'd be beer bottles in there, because back then,
oh, shit.
There was 3 bars and a grocery store in the town I lived in. But so there was that, and we go out there and shoot wood blocks out, in the water, and then everything you could do. The other side was a rock cliff that went straight up, so there was no background things or anything, but it was no big deal. They just knew what you were going to do. You just took your gun out of the scabbard, like we're talking the Wild West, and instead it was bicycle. Put it in the closet with coats.
Those were the high testosterone man days.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'd go back there in a minute. There was a lot of other things that went along with that, but it was not so good. But because when you work in a small sawmill town, or where basically everybody's either a lumberjack or they know how to throw 2x6s 30 yards into a stack off a green chain. There's who's the toughest all the time.
Yeah.
They also know how to drink.
That's what
baby.
came with the testosterone part, right? Getting asses kicked, drinking.
That's how I got all my 22 shells for my rifle, is on Saturday morning and Sunday morning, going down the road. And at that time, beer bottles in Montana had a deposit, and so did obviously pop bottles and stuff. Picking up all of those there and taking those in and trading that off for ammo.
That reminds me of the Sandlot. They were doing that in the Sandlot movie, so they get another baseball after they hit it over to the dog over the fence.
I like the ammo purchase over the baseball purchase.
It's awesome.
Well, if we go all the way back, I think it's the 3rd podcast. We actually did a podcast with Ace when this podcast was first getting going. We did it in your shop. You took us through the tour. We have a video on Shoot to Hunt on the YouTube about your whole setup, and we went through your whole facility from start to finish. But you came in here with this MIT thing. We didn't really cover that in the last. So can you at least start with, before you got into barrels, what was that process? You got out of high school, you started doing what, what led you to MIT, and what led you to the building barrels?
Well, actually, the thing where we ended up getting in there and end up with a master's in there was kind of an oddball, freaky thing, because actually, if we go back, we actually took and I went through literally Spokane Community College in their machine shop course. At that point there, they had a program where you could actually go in there and compete against other people. I actually ended up going national, and I won that. A company called Dual, which I don't even know if they exist today, were much into bandsaws. They made a lot of stuff like that. I ended up after winning that, Dual picked me up, and that's when I had my first abilities with an NC machine. Okay. CNC machines are lovely because they do half the work for you. Back then, you literally had a punch tape, and you had to do everything that thing did. You would have to have it. If you wanted to move it over and drill a hole, you have to tell it to go down where and how far to drill the hole, and you also have to tell it to come back up. Otherwise, it just moves over. So they were a lot more tougher to program, and but by today's standards, they're a heck of a lot harder.
When you said punch tape, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, man, that's going back there. I understand that we're talking vintage stuff here, and you guys aren't quite vintage, so you don't get it. Blaine's over here right now. He's going, I get it. I already know what the hell you're talking about.
We don't have patina.
And I could actually bring
punch
you one
tape,
over.
Well, I visually have like an idea of what it might, like a rolling reel of ribbon where you have told
You actually run just a computer. It was basically built like actually they were IBM Selectrics that had the right G codes on there so that you could type the G codes in there, and then it would produce this tape, which now you could feed into the NC machine, and it would go through all the holes. It would do all the programming, so to speak, in there from that. And then, of course, you'd hit the start button, see what the hell happens.
Assuming the little hanging chads didn't fall out.
Oh, yeah, and that that does happen. They would actually have a hanging chad. If it did that, well, it would read something different.
You talk about like where it punched a hole, but the
little
piece of paper was flipped around?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that had a fucking name, hanging chad.
Oh, Florida election, man.
Oh, yeah.
Chads.
Yeah.
2000.
So anyway, that's what I did. I ended up over there actually working, at the time, for Holland, they were setting up NC machines in the bottom of the building. And as you go up, of course, they got...
You said Holland and Holland?
Yeah.
H&H,
the
British double rifle company?
Yeah. In the meantime, I was there for about 2.5 years. And I actually finished up my college degree in engineering at the School of Sciences at Oxford. And then
so you were in England?
Yes. Yeah.
So I missed
dude's
that.
an onion, man. He's got lots of layers.
Holy shit.
So after winning the competition, Spokane,
I was hired by Dual. Dual made a lot of NC machines.
And they sent you to Oxford for your undergraduate?
Nope, they did not. What that all transpires at the time for how long I was there, that I was actually sponsored by Holland, and that's how I got into engineering school.
Did you get to go to the Holland factory? And
I was literally working on the bottom.
That's the company up there?
Dual still around.
Yep, it's still here. Still building bandsaws. Got great bandsaws.
Who brought you to Europe?
Who brought me to Europe?
Yep.
Dual.
Dual did.
Yeah, because I was there to help set up NC machines.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. And they're great guys, but they don't look at gunsmiths from America like gunsmiths from Europe, because there's a lot of things that are different.
Well, you've seen that Holland video where the guy takes chisels and files and makes stuff look like it's within a thousandth tolerance and fits it together so well it looks like it was machined. I mean, they were doing that when you went there.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that is all scraped in. It still is.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
They just don't have to do as much scraping today
as they used to,
because they got more accurate parts coming off of there. But they still, everything is still scraped in.
And they sell it for 200,000 pounds.
Yeah, I think you can buy, if you look at their shotguns, their sporting grade shotgun, I think it's $40,000 or $42,000. So it's not cheap, but boy, I tell you what, the labor in it, that's what it's all about. And they're very proud of their products as well,
It should be the best of the best.
They're one of them. That's all up to conjecture. And if you go over there in certain pubs, there will be brawls.
No, there's Wesley
over that.
Richards, and there's
Oh yeah, you know, you can go in
Hyman,
there, and if you got 8 guys that are there from Holland and Holland, and you say, hey,
yeah, look at
the
that.
Purdy is the best shotgun in the world,
That's
you'll
a
find
fight?
out it'll be a problem.
It's a fight.
And that's
the
all
Royal is a
hand.
beautiful gun.
I like when you go back to the homepage, Luke. Like, think about that compared to American gun shops. They're not quite the same.
Go take a picture in the next room.
That's actually just the waiting parlor. They didn't.
The waiting
you know,
parlor.
Yeah, it is.
That's awesome.
So, you know, if you have a bespoke gun, which obviously may be a little bit off of rifle barrels, but that's something that's custom made to you. Still to this day, Holland, if you're willing to spend the money, will have one of their gun fitters come over here. They use a tri-gun, which absolutely everything's movable on it. The forearm can be made longer. The triggers can be moved in the system inside there, so you can get the trigger length, the grip style, the comb height, the overall length, the cant, the twist of the stock, the whole 9 yards.
True custom.
It is. It's masterfully fit, and it's done by guys that have been doing it for frickin' ever.
They got, like it says, it has a Dallas gun room.
There you go.
Do they do that there, you think?
You can go there and get
go.
fitted. Yeah, you could get fitted. You might find something on the wall too. You never know.
I'd look like each one of those rifles is probably what I paid for my house.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's some expensive.
Yeah,
stuff
their
in
double
there.
rifles are just stupid expensive.
They are.
That's a dream gun to get a 470 Nitro Express built by them for me
Oof.
and go on an elephant hunt.
Yep.
There you go.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
So you got over there. You got to the UK. What happened after that?
Oh, other than that, you know, I did what I did for them, and then you know we ended up back over here after a while because I was finished with them, and I actually was accepted into MIT because I was second out of 465 students in Oxford. So I was right at the top. I didn't make it the E-top. Between me and him, there was probably, he's a really nice guy anyway, about 0.03 percentage points difference between
first and second.
between.
You mean
know, but
first and
that's what
second
it is,
in
you know.
your class at
Yeah.
Oxford?
Yeah,
And that got you into
mechanical
MIT.
engineering. And oh yeah, they
Okay.
actually took it. I got I got my master's in very short amount of time. It was all free ride. I got the free ride for that.
Okay.
You know, and then we went on to doing things not totally gun related after that. We worked in the plastic injection molding industry for a while, you know, and things like that.
Out of those
Made a
300
product.
something students, how many were Americans?
Oh, I think I was the only one. It's kind
Really?
of like playing Cowboys and Indians, and I was the Indian, man. I think I was the only American in there at that time. That was a bit. It was kind of an oddball thing to even have happen.
Yeah.
But it's just because of my stint, the time that I was there, and they said, "Well, you should go over here." Okay.
Was there any like prejudice against you, think, from like the instructors, or no?
They looked at it as maybe you're from America. I don't know if you really know what we do over here, or you understand our philosophies and
Gotcha.
stuff. And technically, you kind of don't. I'll be honest with you.
On the other hand, we saved them in World War II, and those Brits would have remembered that.
Yes.
So
That one
probably-
thing that they're not is they're very cordial, regardless if they hate your guts. That's one thing you can get out of the guys over there. And they've got they also have a standard, a way they live, you know. And so it's a different, you know, than what we do over here by far. I mean, you know, I come out of Montana, you know, and end up in probably at that time the most densely placed. And the big question, believe it or not, from everybody I went over, they go, "Oh, you know, where are you from?" And I says, "I'm from, you know, from the USA. I grew up in Montana." "Oh, is there Indians still there?" And I go, "Yeah, there is, but not like you think there's Indians." It was a very big concern that, you know, when I went back, you know, that I was going back. There's a couple guys said, "Now you're going to come back," and I go, "Well, yeah, I'm only going to be gone for like a week and a half." You know, and they said, "Well, what about the Indians?" And I go, "Don't worry about the Indians. They're not that big a deal." But, you know, they look at the West over there significantly different at that time than we look at it today. And they say, "Oh, do people carry guns in there?" And I go, "Yeah, they do, you know." And he says, "Is there gunfights?" And I go, only when there's a lot of drunks, and there's a woman involved. It actually was involved in Missoula in an actual shootout in a bar over a woman, and it wasn't me that was involved in it. My ass was on the floor. Okay, you couldn't get any lower. If I could have found a way under the tile, I would have been there, you know. But, you know, so it's a different culture, huge different culture between the two countries. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Kosovo, and it was a peacekeeping mission. We had these tents signed up in this little camp, and it was us and the British and these two GP mediums, you know, like a big wall tent. And we were constantly going at it. And he said, cordial. They like to offend you, but they are cordial. But the only thing that took the pressure off of us of arguing with the Brits is the only thing Brits hate more than the Americans is the Aussies. So
Boy,
the
howdy.
The Australians showed up into another tent, and they left us alone, and they started attacking each other. And it's always around the proper English. It's hilarious.
It is. Oh boy, I bet. And you know, I never really had to deal with the Australians like you had. You know that in there, but that's very much true. There's certain things. Another one is like in the gun industry. Oh, that's a Continental gun. It ain't very good. No matter where it came off the continent, it is not any good. And you look at it, you know, you go to Edinburgh, stuff like that. There's some really great names that are up there in firearms industry, you know, and worldwide recognized. Really got to come out of London.
Oh, I bet.
That's where the real stuff is made.
And I'll bet you Butch Searcy would disagree with that.
Oh, I'm sure he would.
He's a custom double rifle maker in California.
Yeah,
I think,
California.
Yeah.
So you got through that. You end up at MIT. I'm still trying to have this links into making barrels.
It's strange as ever all get out. You know, I've always liked it. I actually, when I went over here and was at the community college, the way I paid my way through community college is I had a place that I had literally a table about the size of this, and this would have been a beautiful one because this is tougher than what I had. I actually built muzzle-loading rifles, and I put myself through college doing nothing but building muzzle-loading rifles. But that time they were a really big craze, you know. So I've always been involved in it. My grandfather, he was kind of a part-time gunsmith. He worked in, he had a farm, you know, in this wintertime, not as much to do. So he was always in there. I was always doing with him. I was 12 years old when I built my first rifle, first bolt-action rifle, you know, and that was an action, a barrel, chamber it up, and then take a block of wood and build a stock for it. You know, no pre-carbs or any of that stuff. So it goes way back on that. And of course, it really helped me out a lot when I was actually making a living off of it for a while. And I also did that. I also ended up working in the electronics industry. And that's how I met Bruce Tom, actually, in plastic injection molding, tool and die work. But I was always involved in it. And I got to a point here with the company I was working with that I was working so many hours at home in my own shop, you know, plus the hours working there. And they were saying, hey, we're going to move a lot of this, which at that time happened, to Mexico. You know, and so it was like one of those things there. He says, yeah, we're looking at, you know, reduction in force. Anybody want to volunteer? And my arm, it was up. I didn't even know I put it up. So obviously that was the thing to do. And so I ended up doing that, of course, the severance package and everything, and never basically looked back from there. I'd always been in the gun business one way or another. I had people approach me over the years on building barrels and how to do that. And I helped a lot of these guys out, some of them probably more than I should have. And some of the companies are still, the tooling is still circulating around. The company names have changed over the years because, you know, you go in there and regardless if you're talking about us or any barrel maker, procedure on how you do it that way because the results that you get. And I don't think we do anything the same as anybody else other than what we really want is super straight drilled holes. And I know Blaine and I will talk about that here in a minute. But, you know, I always did that when it come to me, wanted to start a button rifle barrel business. He was big, huge into shooting, same as me, grew up out of Great Falls, came out, retired out of the military, had some money, and he wanted to do this. So we started, build button rifle barrels. And he persisted with that, and he ran it for a while, and then we sold to somebody in upper state New York, from what I understand. And I've had other people over the years that have have asked me questions about how the hell do you button a rifle barrel, and there's a lot to it. But when it comes all the way down to it, somebody at the very end here, only about 10 years ago, and that was Jerry Bleck, which is my partner in Ace Barrels at this time, he wanted to build this business. And he says, I want to build really, really good barrels. And I says, well, I'm not interested in this if you want to build one barrel every 3 weeks for yourself, because there's a hell of a lot of work goes into this. And I says, you're going to bust your ass for a lot. And when it all comes down to it, the money you're going to spend, and the amount of barrels that you're going to put out there, they're going to be $1,000 barrel, each one of them, regardless you built them yourself. So I says, if you're looking at it from a production standpoint, great. Well, he says, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to do it for my son. He wanted, because there was, at that time, a little bit of a crunch in the housing industry in Spokane, go back 10, 12 years, and, he didn't know if he was going to have a job. So I said, okay, fine. So we got involved in this, and it got very technical, because I said, I'm not interested in building button rifle barrels, because there is things you can control, but there's a whole bunch of stuff you can't control. It's just the way it is, So we went into and building cut rifle barrels. Out of that, the only way to really get a machine was either buy something that was literally wore out and you'd have to rebuild it. Or you could go to Absolute. There's a few other places that will build you a machine, and they're fairly expensive. And crazy money and no tooling, none of that kind of stuff. I says, why don't we just sit down here and let's just go ahead and build servo motors and get some, get the drivers and all the stuff we need in there, and we'll make this run like it should. And we'll make it the best way we can. Not the cheapest way we can, but the best way we can. And he was all about that. I ended up actually, because of the amount of work and machine work I did for him and all the engineering and everything, I ended up at the end, his son didn't want to do anything with it. Which was kind of a bummer. I think Jerry felt, but it's like, okay, it's this building full of machinery. What's going to go on? And I says, well, I don't know. We ended up selling, he was making a few barrels, and I was still working out of my own shop. And then Voodoo Gunworks called up one day and said, we just found out you can't buy barrels anywhere. And I go, yeah, we've always had these crunches where there's nothing to buy and everything's overbought. And he says, can you guys build 22s? And they talked to Jerry about this, and then Jerry called me and says, you think you want to get involved in that? And I go, shit, no, I got way too much other garbage going on to get involved in a barrel business at this time. And at the end, I thought about it for a minute. I go, well, hell, they can't get any barrels. They could go from 20 guns a month to 350 or 500 guns a month. You could actually, that looks like a venue. So we sat down there and said, okay. I called Jerry back. I says, tell them we're interested, but they got to buy all the tooling up front. And so he did that, and they just said, how big a check do you want? And that's
Nice.
Literally what it was. I said, what do you want? And I said, well, I want to cover all my tooling. So about that time, it was about $7,000 to $8,000 for one caliber to build, and we went into the rimfire thing, and we went through and done a huge pile of R&D in it as well to figure out what makes a 22 rimfire work. How do you make that thing really work? And you don't get to deal with the ammunition. You can buy different ammunitions, but you really don't get to build your own ammunition, even though there's some guys out there that are doing that now. But in all reality, how do you make this shoot? How do you make it that it be accurate? And we went through a lot of things. We found out, first of all, that the 6 grooves were better than 5 grooves, and the 4 grooves were worthless. And to be honest with you, we even made a lot of 8 and 10 groove barrels at first, thinking, okay, how much drive force do we need to keep that bullet from slipping? And we settled on 6 because it works so damn well compared to even 5. And I know there's companies out there that build 5s and they shoot really well. I get that. But we just, with all the stuff we did, we ended up at this 6 groove rifling. And it's kind of went through our whole company. I mean,
is it the same shape of rifling, whether it's a 22 rimfire or a bolt, a center fire barrel? Is it the same shape of rifling? So 6 Ballard.
Well, it's going to be very similar. You get in there, and what we got to do is if it mattering on how much we disturb the bullet, okay, because what you really want this thing to do is soft lead. You just don't want that thing to skid at all right before it starts rotating. You want to make sure that thing does that. Obviously, in a good bench, and the blade's already kind of been there a little bit with the 22 thing. is that you want that thing to engrave the rifling. You want to, when you put it in there, you pull it back out, you'll see the rifling on the bullet. If you don't, 22s usually just don't do that well. And from
So there's no
there,
throat or anything in there. The rifling comes all the way up to the bullet.
no, there is a taper. There's still a throat in there, but the actual, instead of having like a free bore or whatever, a parallel section like you would in most centerfire guns, it basically goes right into
Goes right in the rifling.
right into the rifling, and you want to have that in the right spot so that you get some engraving. It seems to be the way to control it the best. So as we went around and we found out and modified everything, it doesn't take a whole bunch for a 22. The big one is not to have the proper amount of resistance so the powder does its job. It's a huge, huge thing. And I know Blaine's over there shaking his head, and it's because, man, it's not only technically a rimfire thing, but it also relates to centerfire as well.
So bore diameter.
Bore and groove diameter are a big deal there. Okay. Yeah, and we go through there in 1 and 16. Voodoo had what they wanted, 1 and 16 twist. As far as bar and grooves, they weren't too concerned about that. We started sending stuff down there, and this goes back 5 or 6 years when most people look at a 22, and if they shot an 1.5 group at 100 yards, they had the best 22 rifle in the universe. Except for a few guys out there that are shooting bench rests, they're really dug into it. It was that way. Well, we went from, they went from finding barrels that they could shoot 1.5 inches to barrels that all of a sudden shot under 1 inch. And then from there, we groomed things down to where they were starting to shoot smaller than that. And now, if you buy a 22 that's a custom built, it should be, with the right ammo, it should be under 1 inch any day of the week.
That one that you helped, Taylor did all the work on it. I think, and it was on a CZ action too. It wasn't even a custom action.
Yeah.
He sent me a group when he was working it up. It was 0.3 at 100 yards, a 5-shot group. Out of
Wow.
22, yeah.
Wow.
So I was like, wow.
What do you mean when he was working it up?
Well, he was trying a bunch of different ammo and testing and seeing what was going to shoot the best. And I haven't heard back from him since, but it appears to be shooting competitive. This was for an ELR 22 as well. I think, what, up to 400 yards?
Yeah, about out to 400 seems to be really pushing it.
Yeah. So it was way more accurate than I thought. And years ago, I've still got it. It's a Remington 541T with a heavy barrel. I got that thing to shoot 11/16 of an inch at 100 yards on a day when there was no wind at all. And that was playing with a bunch of different ammo. But that was hard to repeat with that. I'll bet this one that we built, that you helped us build, probably is pretty consistent under half minute at 100.
I would think if he's in the 0.3 range, because that's really seems to be the gold standard as far as 100-yard bench rest 22s, which is a big thing. It used to be 50 yards.
Yeah.
Now it's all 100 yards. And if you got a gun that shoots, it's got to shoot half inch or slightly less than that to stay in the winter circle, and you will do that. So that's really hanging it out there. But like I said, we took that thing looking at it and say, we can't change the 22 shell, but we can change the bore and groove dimensions and the width of the grooves, the whole 9 yards, to let that powder be consistent. We're working with another company right now they do a lot of testing of that. We went into a little thing here not too long ago. I said, he was looking at, I got some 1 and 13 twist. He wanted long range barrels, and everybody's saying, okay, you need more twist. Well, when we did the mathematics, we have an algorithm that we've designed, which would, if we had one of these walls here, the mathematical equation wouldn't fit on one of these walls. It'd take 1.5 of them to do that. But obviously, broken down computers are a lovely thing because they take all the slide rule work out of that. And by the way, a slide rule for you younger folks in the room.
Is that like an abacus?
It's very similar. Yeah. It's just a little bit more precise. But other than that, it's still racial proportion. So, yeah, it is an abacus.
They built the SR-71 with a slide rule. So
there you go.
Yeah, they did. And, of course, there's the Tacoma Narrows Bridge that blew down in 1965 was also built with a slide rule.
It went to the moon on a slide rule, didn't we?
We did. Yeah, we did. Actually,
allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly. If you've ever been down to the Kennedy Space Center, you need to go there and look at what that guy sat in. It is freaking crazy. If I looked at that and I says, to get me in that and launch me up in that capsule, you'd have to shoot me in the head and throw me in there because I ain't going in any other way.
It probably looked like that submarine all those millionaires just paid to die in.
Yeah.
Oh, it was smaller. Yeah.
Tight.
Holy smokes!
Well, I mean,
There's-
just like the 5-gallon bucket in the corner so you can take a piss.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
No way.
yeah, it's crazy.
There's
I mean,
no
there's
way.
like on the outside, there's big old Phillips head screws holding this thing together, and really bad welds. By today's standards, they're very bad welds. But they did that. So. But
Big
all
balls.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like with anything, when it comes to accuracy in it, you have to work with all the components at one time, and we do that a lot. We do a lot of testing before we even brought out. We just got you guys 6mm barrels out here. I don't know how many.
Yes,
you've had
you
to
did.
shoot. Yes, we did. We have Ryan's wonderful box.
If you're
Yes.
on the YouTube, we got this bejeweled box that they delivered the first
Yes.
6mm barrel to Ryan. 'cause
Yeah, there it is. That
Ryan
is
was
the
basically
box.
beating a dead horse about this 6mm for the last basically since we did the first podcast at the beginning of the year, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So
yeah,
he
it
was
like-
beating that horse ever since then.
This is 6 months in the.
Yeah,
in the
6
waiting-
months.
in the-
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But you said
it
you said you put a bow on it, and boy, did you!
Yes.
Yeah.
My boys did glued them all on there, and the only thing that they really said is that thank God it was a 22-inch barrel, because if it had been a 26-inch barrel, I don't know if we could have got it done in one day.
We were sitting here talking. I was like, "Oh man, they had to have a daughter or wife do that." And then when they came in the shop, they're like, "No,
No,
we did."
When they brought it in, Ryan was hunting. I actually took a picture of it, and I
Yeah.
said he happened to have service wherever he was, and I think you were in the. Oh, we're not supposed to talk about where you were.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty freaking awesome.
Yep. Well, there it is. I see that we still have it here on the table.
Well, now that it had to shift gears, we came halfway through hunting season. Then
That's out for right now.
no, it's going to go on something special. They're working on something special with bat, and that's going to go on that.
Okay. Great.
The new, well, it's just the short action version of
Right.
the Vesper. It's going to have a 75-degree bolt throw now, which is pretty awesome. Bruce is excited about that. Then they're coming out with a new competition action called the Bat Hammerhead,
Oh, okay.
which is also up for pre-order at this point. So it'll have a 75-degree two-lug throw, but also a dual position bolt stop. So it's going to have a BR dasher length pull,
Okay.
which is 380 thou shorter than a standard pull. So technically, you got two different features there that can make you a faster shooter. So less pickup, less pullback.
Yep. Yeah.
So a couple things there, yeah. And eventually, I guess we need to convince them to make a 22 action too.
Yeah. Well, then what this one's actually going to have, we have our stock coming out, so it's going to have that, the stock and the light scope. So it's going to be 7-pound rifle all up.
Oh.
Should be
Great.
6 of course. God's cartridge.
Here we go. The new rock stock we just finished. We basically took a donor stock and bondoed and sanded, and we just sent that off to Stockies. Is going to be making it for us here very shortly. We got a meeting today to finalize all the details. Today being, for those rock stock followers, today being November 7th, we have a meeting with Stockies, and within about 30 days we should have the test in our hand. Yep. Pretty
Good.
cool.
Yeah, that is. It's all
Be an
cool.
awesome
It's all
stock.
exciting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It is very exciting. So only thing you guys, I guess we're jumping ahead a little bit. The only thing we're missing now is I take is a 338.
Yeah. It's the next one. We're in the process now of filing up. Actually, when I came over here, I stopped working on the cutter heads themselves. So we're almost there. We already got our holes. We already got all of that stuff all taken care of. So it's just down to making sure the cutter head does its job right.
Okay.
And I'm still waiting on my heavy varmint 6mm 4-groove for my bench rest gun.
I understand that. Might as well bring that up.
Just saying.
Throw it on.
Why not?
Throw it onto the pile.
Pile it. Yeah,
That's probably the one reason why Blaine wanted to be in here, was to
I
check
got a
on
feeling
his
just
fucking
bang
barrel.
me on that little
Yes.
thing, and I get that.
Waited
Yeah.
the whole time for that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's that 4-groove thing. And we did in 6mm. We do make the 4-grooves as well. When I set it up, we actually set the guns up at this time, and we haven't wore a barrel totally out yet. They're both out there still doing their same job. They're both very accurate, but we're only at about 1,000 rounds in a 4 and a 6 groove. Now, I know guys like 4 grooves, and so we said, no reason to really, sit down and say, oh, you got to use a 6. I'm still a favor of the 6 because I think they last longer. I can't say that the 4-groove is a bad thing because we're getting identical results out of either one.
Well, when we're shooting groups in the ones at 1,000 yards with 4 grooves, they do okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it seems to work, and so that's probably what I'll.
Well, what do
try.
you say? Maybe 6 grooves would be just as good.
Maybe,
Maybe.
but when we don't we're not going to keep a barrel much past about 1,300 rounds either. They don't shoot competitively anymore.
Yeah.
So
Maybe
just
that's
how
it's
much
a
you have to.
weird specialized application is all it is.
Maybe
It
you
is.
could be a new trendsetter, a new record holder with a 6 Ballard.
Yeah, maybe.
Well,
We'll
maybe
do the-
what
we'll do
maybe
the
what
4
Mark's
first.
saying is that the 6 would last longer than 1,300.
It might.
It might give you more accuracy for a longer period of time. Most of the time, people who are really looking for that aren't bench rest guys, because you have to stay on top of the gilt edge accuracy, and a new barrel that's just properly broke in is gonna do that for you. That's just the way it is. But when you start looking at guys like that are shooting extreme long range or even the PRC stuff, they like to have, if they can get another 250 or 300 rounds out of the barrel and keep the accuracy, competitive accuracy, why wouldn't you switch?
So make me 2 then. Make me a 4 and a 6, and I'll run them side by side.
Wow.
There we go.
There he goes. Now, he just, he's pinching me for another one.
And
See
but
how he
the
waited
problem
the
with
whole
bench rest
time.
guys is even if the 6 Ballard proved to be everything we just said it might be, it would still have to replicate that 10 years in a row before anybody would adopt it.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, Blaine said, you said there's nothing been new that's changed the game in a while, so maybe this is it.
Could be. I think the last thing was a 6BR Ackley that Alex brought back into popularity, 5-6 years ago. Before that, it was a Dasher, and then Walt Berger's 105 hybrid targets. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out. We'll get you there.
That's the fun part.
So 33 is next.
Yes, it is. 33 is next. We hope to be. I will be shooting by before the end of this month here. I don't know if by the end of the month they will be out on the market.
I heard from another local gunsmith that someone's been trying to get you to make 25.
Yes.
Do
Yeah.
you know? Well,
No,
after 33, what are you doing next?
Actually, after 33 is probably going to be 25. I
Okay.
mean, the thing is that, we've had an uptick in 22 centerfire barrels because of the 22 arc. People want to get out there and do that. It's looking like the 25 Creedmoor is going to come out sometime mid next year. That's what we understand from Hornaday.
Okay.
So we'll be up and before that. I did have it up and before then.
Yeah, I mean 25 Creed. You already get head stamp brass now from Peterson, and guys are definitely running it.
Yeah,
in
what we're
competition.
looking for is where we end up, and we can probably talk about SAAMI for 4 or 5 hours, but where does SAAMI light into all of this kind of thing?
Is SAAMI influencing what you're doing next?
They will only influence us to a certain point. Be honest with you, we broke from SAAMI on the 7mm. And the reason for it is we got much better results. So
Can you
it's
explain
kinda like
what you did different?
Well, it goes for a long ways. I probably even got some bullets from you. I talked to a lot of gun makers and a lot of major hand loaders, and I said, I'm looking for all 7mm bullets. What I want to know is what you have. I said, I'd like to have 2 or 3 of them, and I want to know where they are and how old they are. So we were actually measuring bullets that went all the way back into the 1930s to present day, and measuring for nothing more than outside diameter and not necessarily consistency, and overall length and what they would do, bearing surfaces, all these things that become an issue when you start designing the inside of a barrel. And what we found out is it's just a scramble of all kinds of things. If we go back to 7mm when it really started out, it had a 275 bore in it. Okay, so what happened, I don't know. After you get to about 1920, 30 in Europe, where 7mm was a big deal, but you also got to keep in time at that time, we're talking about a German cartridge, not very popular in the United States, so who cared what they were doing with it? They actually went to 276. And later on in 63, when Winchester came out with the 284, and the 100,
Model 100.
Model 100, they were then at that time SAAMI was already there, very well established, and they just changed it to 277. For what reason, I still have no idea. But what we did find out is we can run a 277 bore, or we can run a 276 bore, and the pressure curve is almost identical. It is extremely close. It's so close you could say that they're identical.
So right now, SAAMI in the U.S. is 277.
Yes.
But your barrels are 276.
They're 276.
And as far as the end consumer is concerned, this really doesn't matter.
No.
These results are not important as long as you're shooting well.
Exactly, and the reason why we did that is because we got much better results with the 276 than we did with 277.
That is common too, right? Amongst all the different calibers, 8 thou difference between land and grooves is common. So you're
it's
basically
very, very
following
much so.
Course. Yeah, 8 thou difference. It's nothing new.
Yeah, it's nothing really new. We see, a few people want, like I said, and believe it or not, we do that in 6 mil. We do 237 as well now.
Oh, you do? Yeah,
we do that
for
now.
whatever reason. That's become the popular size. So.
And and here we're limiting. You're right. And a lot of people say, I don't want a 236. I want 237. So we got to the point there. And I'll be honest with you. I was looking through one of the old toolboxes in there, and there was three little sleeves about this long in there. And I go, what the hell are these? But they were bought like 10 years ago, and they were 237 reamers to cut 237 bores.
Huh.
So, we put that all together, and we can make a 237 as well as 237.
We should probably explain to the listeners here, like land and groove difference. So when you talk about, if we're talking about a 6 millimeter bullet, it's 0.243 inches, which is the groove diameter.
Correct.
So that's the furthest. That's down in the cut rifling.
Yeah.
It is the bullet diameter.
Yes.
For your outermost. And then the grooves come in and they impress. So every bullet has to be impressed upon to induce the spin. We're talking about that inner diameter of the top of the groove that pushes in on the bullet. That's where you're saying 237 on a 243. Mm-hmm. And we said on a 7 mil, it is 276 on a 284. So 8 thou difference. So on each side, that groove that pushes into the bullet is 4 thousandths.
Roughly, mattering on what it is, most of them are that way. There's a little bit of exceptions down in the 22 calibers and the 20s because it just becomes maybe more than what the bullet structure can take.
And you guys are playing with inner diameters of the grooves.
Yes, we do. We play with that as well as the bore diameters.
But there's also another calculation that's a total sum of surface area.
Correct. There is a surface area.
If you draw your finger up around the lands and grooves, you have to add up all that real estate to equal another number.
Correct.
Because you can only have and if you increase that number, that's more drag on the bullet. And if you decrease that number, that's less drag on the bullet.
Correct.
These are the fine tolerances that you're playing with to the 10th of a thousandth in order to make the best shooting barrels in the market.
Yep. Yeah,
okay.
we really do, and we watch that stuff really close to the point. Like I may have not said this, I probably did before. Each of our barrels have a number on the back, and you'll see that a lot of it will be the same. Like right now, you'll see the last 4 digits on there. One's 23 and the other one's 23. And why is that? Well, that's steel lot number 23 built in 23. Mm-hmm. So the other numbers are basically the serial number or the barrel number of it as it comes out of the drill. So we have all of that stuff, and we catalog everything that barrel has. Mm-hmm. Before it gets to go out, it has to meet absolutely all those criteria, and it's checked before it's boxed. Mm-hmm. Right before it's boxed. Mm-hmm. If there's something there that is not what it's supposed to be, it gets set off to the side. It may go someplace, it may not go anywhere.
How many total people you have making barrels?
We have 3.
And how many barrels are you making per month, average?
Right now, it actually, things slow down. Now it's speeding right back up, which is pretty typical. You get that little summer slowdown in there. But, right now we're building about between 80 and 100 barrels a month.
100 barrels a month.
Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can usually do that. Yeah.
Okay.
I got a layman's question.
Sure.
I never really thought about until you talking about groove, surface area. Mm-hmm. Take a 4 groove, 5 groove, 6 groove. Mm-hmm. How does the pressure get regulated from if there's a 6 groove touching a barrel compared to a 4 without hitting pressure faster with that 6?
They're just not as deep.
So you're
pushing on the bullet less.
Well, actually, there's a couple things that go on in there, and again, we could go to whiteboard and make you an equation, but it really won't make much sense.
The simple people.
Dumb it down.
Yeah, we're going to have to do it for the younger generation. They don't have that time in there, and I know Blaine agrees with me on that. And what we look at in there is actually, if we look at a 4 or 6 groove, we do most of that in there, is you still have to have, regardless of what it is, you still have to make that the bullet has to spin immediately in there. As soon as it moves into the rifling, if it isn't rotating and it slips in there, it can actually tear the jacket right then and there. And it's done, because you got to keep in mind, That's the highest pressure you have on that cartridge. Is when that bullet just gets into the barrel. That's as tough as it gets on the damn thing. Okay, and the one thing between a 6 and a 4 groove barrel is that to make a 4 groove barrel shoot, we got to run about 32% of it of the bore has to be lands. If we go much less than that, and we've tried it many times, we end up with inconsistencies. You run with accuracy problems.
32%. What's the percentage on the 6, just so we have the numbers?
The 6, we're getting there, would be 28%.
Okay, so basically, like we're saying, you're pushing into the bullet more or deeper.
No, we don't push in deeper. We're talking
It's
about
wider.
the width
The
of
width,
the lands.
width of the
Yeah,
lands.
and it seems to take a 4 groove, needs that little extra amount in there to use part of the top of the land to drive the bullet.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
What's the percentage on your 4 groove then compared to your 6?
32 and 28.
About 32 and
and then
28. And we can actually, on certain ones, we go less than 28 on them, to be honest with you, because we can. And that's just from testing.
I think if you're trying to picture this as a listener, basically the bullet gets smashed into some rifling that induces twist, and there has to be a certain amount of surface area touching the bullet. If you have less surface area, so the lands are not as wide or they're not as deep, then the bullet's going to make its way through the bore quicker, which could potentially not let all the powder burn.
Well, I think you would probably see all the powder burn because there's still, I mean, if you stick a bullet in a barrel, it's not an easy task to get out of there.
Yeah.
The big one is to make sure and assure that the bullet is rotating like it's supposed to be right off the get-go.
Okay.
And if you don't do that, once the bullet gets down the barrel, to be honest with you, a lot of your consistency and stuff comes out of the first 2 inches of your barrel, and most of the accuracy comes out of the last 2 or 3 inches of the barrel. What's in between there is not as significant.
Say that again one more time.
About 2 inches of it at the very first has to do with consistency.
Consistency meaning extreme spread, standard
Velocities,
deviation.
yes, all of those things
from the
there.
first couple inches. So how the bullet impresses on those lands initially, that's your consistent velocity.
Yeah, that's where you can be more consistent, and that's done with lead angles and all the things that can be done from a chambering standpoint.
And then the accuracy is the last few inches.
Yeah, we really love to have it every time that we do that some. We always like to have the muzzle 1/10,000th, which sounds like a little small number, and it is smaller at the muzzle than it is at the breech. Just out of the fact is if there's anything in there that would cause a problem, that would cause the biggest one. And I'm sure Blaine will agree with me that the last thing you want is a worn muzzle, because that's just telling you they're going wherever they're going to end up going.
And you're talking about the bullet needing to start spinning correctly. That goes in with how we chamber here, which we're anal about getting that area in front of the throat exactly straight, dialed in with the lathe spindle. That way when the bullet leaves, it's its best chance to go in and engrave.
And engrave the same all the way around.
Yeah.
That's another biggie.
And I think that's one of the reasons why our gun shoots so well.
That's why you look at when you go in there with the bore scope and you look at all the grooves and how that lead hit those grooves. You're looking for that.
Make sure it's even.
Yeah.
It's even all the way around.
Distance from the...
or just so that if they all look the same, no matter how it was machined or what, as long as they all look the same in a circle as you're rotating the barrel with the bore scope, and then it should be, everything should be even. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what you need. If you don't have that part there, God knows what you get. And there's gun barrels I've seen that you can't look down them from one end to the other, and there have been shooters. But the fact remains is, if the throat's in there crooked and the chamber's in there, it's not going to shoot very well. It is just never do.
So going back to what you talked about, the last 3 inches being the accuracy of the barrel.
Part.
If you had a steel barrel that seemed to not shoot very well, but you had consistent velocities, could you cut off the last few inches of the barrel and maybe see an improvement in the barrel's accuracy?
You can do that. Some of that can happen because of barrel harmonics alone. And I know, Blaine's over there nodding, but that's part of it. But the issue is, if you want to turn it down, we really like, and this is what we end up getting. Our cutters are made to cut isometrically, which means that the tension against it makes it want to stay in one spot. So that works out really well for us. But there is a little break point in that. And usually what it is, as the chip load gets a little bit bigger in the cutter pocket, we just get just a little bit of the cutter move, and it makes the muzzle just a touch smaller. And so it's just I sit down here and look at that. And for a long time, we looked at how do what do we want to take care of that? And the answer is no. It's a good thing.
Oh, you remember Bill Colfie and all his stuff where it was some precision shooting probably 20 years ago when it was a big deal. He was doing 22 rimfire stuff, and he would get barrels from whatever manufacturer, and he would run it. I don't know if he was running a slug or a tight bushing or whatever. He would find the choke point in the barrel and cut it off there. He wanted that right at the muzzle. I guess you could get away with that on a 22 because whether it's 16 or 28 inches, it's probably, I don't know how much difference in velocity it's going to make. But that was a big deal. He would cut all these barrels at differing lengths to try to get that choke point in order for it to shoot the best.
It's a big deal in a rimfire. Most of our rimfire barrels we have a continual taper from the breech to the muzzle of about 2.5 to 3 10,000ths because it's lead, first of all, and it handles that so well. And they would look at a lot of really early guns when lead bullets were king. The target guns all have choke in them, enough that when you push a patch through there, you go, why am I starting to get tight at the muzzle?
That's not as important in a centerfire, I take it.
It's not as much, but you still can't have it bigger at the muzzle than it is at the breech. I mean, that's just a way to come up with mediocre results at best and struggling. For somebody out there that's putting the guns together like you are. All that makes is your day just freaking miserable. I mean, I know, I can tell you've been there before, and it's just like, don't want that. That's one of the criteria of every barrel that comes out of our shop, is that muzzle is going to be the same size as the breech or a couple tenths smaller. But, mattering on caliber and stuff, it just seems to make a better barrel. They just shoot better, more predictable. Blaine doesn't go out there and doesn't cuss me nearly as much when they all come out that way.
A few times I chuckled before because a few times they say, "Do you remember?" And I keep waiting for it. Do you remember Jesus? So is it truthful to say less grooves make faster barrels or not?
No, that won't. Less grooves won't do that. Matter of fact, what really creates anything is back pressure. Smokeless powder works off of it in a different way than what you look at something burning. It really requires pressure. The more pressure it has,
it's the opposite of what you would picture. Like physically, it's the opposite of what you would picture, where a larger bore that wasn't squeezing the bullet as tight would make it go faster, but it's the opposite.
It's totally the opposite.
The more you hold the bullet and allow that pressure to build behind the bullet makes a fast barrel. So it's a tight barrel that's a fast barrel.
Yeah, tight barrels are always going to be
You
faster.
were explaining that with your test with 7mm. I think you started out with a really large groove diameter.
Yeah, we did. We actually started out, and by this time here, we were already into this to 276. But yeah, we went to 284.4, and because at that point there, we didn't know what the sweet spot was because there's been a lot of problems with 7mm barrels really shooting and producing well, and so we went in there and we went oversized to say, okay. Be honest with you, there's companies that button rifle that they make their barrels 3/10 over because they say that's what we need for the material that's displaced by the rifling, and it doesn't work that way, but that's their theory. That we sat down there and did that. What we would end up with our test ammunition, which would be 250 feet a second slower. This was the first thing we had. Accuracy wasn't where the crap. Nothing was to work. You pick up the bullets. There'd be gas cutting on the sides of the bullets. It's like, okay, we ain't going here. Looking at controlling pressures because it is a problem.
How are you capturing your bullets during testing?
We have at the range that we use, we actually have a big long box that we can catch those in.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it goes about 35 feet or 40 feet.
What would you compare
pellets actually?
So a single 10,000, a single 10th for those that are listening. So that's 0.0001 inches. What would you compare that to a size that a person might know that could reference?
It's so small, and of course in our barrel shop, when you work with it every day, you start saying, well, that's like 50 millionths off. Well, you're going, you have to take everything in context. The best thing to look at it, and the only way that I can tell you that is if you took a cigarette paper and you took it and laid it down and you made 10 equal slices of that cigarette paper, then you'd have 1/10,000 piece.
And these are the measurements you're playing in every day. Is it a fucking single tenth changing?
There's actually one single tenth could make or break it if we sell the barrel or we throw it in the scrap bin.
Wow.
This
Very much.
This brings
intense.
up a question that a lot of guys have is a fast barrel versus a slow barrel. Because, occasionally, maybe not as much
Well,
as
it can be a tenth difference.
Jake would like to think. But,
Yeah.
sometimes you get barrels that are just fast, and sometimes you get them that are slow. What causes that?
Other than actually bore groove dimensions, how much you squeeze that bullet down, that's basically
So it's a
all it
tenth
comes
difference. So
down
it's
to.
plus or minus a tenth, basically.
We sit down there and most barrel makers, and we aren't in that thing. When we started this company here, the answer was, I don't care what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
We're going to go in there. We're going to do the math. We're going to do the physics. We're going to come up with the right thing that becomes dependable, reliable, and accurate. And from somebody putting together guns, that they want that on everything they put together.
What do you think the average velocity spread would be, plus or minus a tenth?
Most of the time, a tenth, and you have to pretty well define that. You're not going to see that until it gets to a certain point. So if we're looking at 284, and let's say we make a barrel that the groove dimension is 284.4. Okay, we already know it's going to be extremely slow because the bullet won't fill the grooves.
Yeah.
See, so you got to be
depends
there.
on which part, whether it's the land or the groove, and then how far you went either way.
Yeah, see, and
Okay.
that we actually, we have a algorithm that we came up with that basically is what we call elongation, and that really comes down to when you stuff the bullet in the barrel, how much does it grow? Because it does grow in length because we squish it down. It's
If you
no different
squeeze it,
than-
it has to get longer.
It has to get longer. We like our barrels to give, with most of the bullets that they're really meant to use with, they're going to have about between 1.4 and 1.6% elongation.
Wow.
And so you make the groove size so it elongates it that much then?
Yes, correctly.
Okay.
That's how we do that. Yeah.
How fast does that happen?
The what? The
The
elongation.
stretch
Yeah.
immediately as it's
Is
squeezed.
it bam?
It is. It is literally when the gun goes off first. We look at that. We have this huge pile of pressure till the bullet starts to engrave, which is not. Obviously with jacketed bullets, you're not going to have them engraved like you would a .22 long rifle. So there might be some bullet jump. There might not be any bullet jump. They've been, guns have been successfully inaccurate both ways, right? But as soon as it starts to make it in there, and it's probably in the bearing surface 50% is the highest pressure peak you have. That's where you're going to see that 62 or 63 or 65,000 psi on that. So at that point there, now we're actually, the bullet is shorter. Okay. Once it gets back in there, the bullet will be longer because it's still not totally in the rifling. Keeping in mind that all of this is happening in about 3 milliseconds.
So what happens as soon as it leaves? Does it change shape again as soon as it exits the muzzle?
They can, matter on bullet construction, they can actually do that. And we've had some high-speed photography where it shows them actually buckling.
So that's why that you can't rely on a book BC. The BC needs to be what's shot out of your barrel because your barrel is going to reshape the bullet differently since each barrel is different. But back to that on fast versus slow. So like when chambering a barrel, let's say we'll take a 7mm. I may grab a bushing to try to find the right bushing for the reamer, and it might be 0.2772 on one of them. Another one might be 0.2778. So there's 0.6 difference in the diameter there. And so generally you're saying that now that's on the off the lands.
The idea of the lands,
Yeah, is that going to affect how fast the barrel is, or is that?
It can to a certain extent, and it matters. Another thing when you're looking at what you're looking for, you're not necessarily going all the way through the barrel. It's not uncommon for the lands in the back of the barrel
bigger,
to breach
bigger
into
and smaller. Yeah.
Just to be a little bit bigger. It's that
generally,
does happen.
what would you say if you got a fast barrel? It's just a little bit tighter in the right spot, and a slow barrel's looser in the wrong spot, or?
Pretty much that, except for a slow barrel's probably going to be a little bit loose from one end to the other end.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to take that because we still have that chance for all the powder to really do its deal after the bullet's in there. What we don't want it is to make it easier for it to go down the bore.
Okay.
You see, if you do that, obviously the powder's lost a lot of.
And a faster barrel is going to be tighter.
Almost always. I haven't seen where it hasn't been.
Okay.
Or in the displacement of the bullet. I mean, there's a couple ways to make that faster. I mean, you could sit down there and say, okay, we want to make a little bit faster barrels. Well, we'll have more land, higher ratio of lands to grooves, and automatically the bullets get pinched. You increase the pressure.
Yeah.
That's one of the ways that the 5R system works. Is that's one of the things they do to get the grip you need for the way that the rifling is. They have to make them tighter. You know, a lot of times 5R rifles shoot a little bit faster, and that's one of the reasons for it is because if they don't, it won't grip the bullet. It's just that's one of the downsides to that thing. But, you know, knowing that the 5R rifling was originated in Russia, that's where that come from, and they did that on their military guns. They were also looking at it to a certain extent. They used it for their pommel guns for the U.S. Olympic teams because they were hard to measure, and they were making them smaller. And you get more speed out of that 155 pommel bullet in a 308. Believe me, you can have them things roaring out of there. The new pommel barrels are 306. I think 306.5 is what you can have in the groove, and 298 in the bore.
Wow.
I think is legal.
Wow.
Oh baby.
That's tight. That's
Yeah, about 250 feet a second out of that bullet. But then again, them guys aren't reloading them cases either. They're not any good after that first round.
It's like Jake's 300 Ultra.
yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's a one of a kind. We started chatting out in front of the shop a few weeks back, and we started talking about metallurgy and good steel versus bad steel, and you brought up an interesting fact about, I think it was Hiroshima,
and then certain guns, they had to find old guns to build the new guns.
You actually had to find
conversation?
good steel from old guns
Yeah.
to smelt back down to make good steel now. Just walk us through a little bit about what you were talking about.
Well, you know, metallurgy in its rarest raw form. Okay, if we go back to that, we're still use the Bessemer process to make steel. Okay,
The Bessemer.
yeah, so that's back to when Carnegie owned Carnegie Steel. This goes back in the 1880s.
Yeah, no, we don't know him. We do.
We know.
Do you
know
remember-
What?
I was going to say,
I was never
That's back in the
invited
Jesus
to one
days.
of his parties. So. I wanted to go to his house. He just wouldn't have nothing.
okay.
Yeah, but you know, it literally goes back that far. And the way things are done today, there's some companies that do it different, but most of the steel in the United States is still built that same way. In an open pot with a blast furnace, and they blow all the carbon out. Now we add the extra stuff that we want back in there, get rid of all the stuff you don't want that makes it iron, and they bring the stuff in that makes it steel. You know, and we run into this problem. It's a consistent fight for us in the barrel, in our shop, of making sure that the steel is good from one end to the other end, that's consistent from one end to the other end.
You also talked about where the steel was smelted could take in particles from the environment.
They do, and it still does that way today. There for years, and it's still produced. There's two different kinds of mild steel that you use in the automotive industry. One is called rimmed, and one is called killed. It has to do with the bricks that are in the lining of the blast furnace. Will actually change the mechanical properties of the steel.
Really?
Yes, it's crazy that you can get that, and that one is more malleable, so they use that to make fenders and stuff because it bends easy. The other one's a little bit stiffer when it's bent and fatigued, so they build frames out of that. You know, so you know they found this out years and years ago. I mean, it's quite surprising, and you know, I don't know how much that process is left because I'm not in the automotive industry, so I wouldn't know. But that's where it started. And then when we started looking for steel, there's only real two companies that we're really looking at dealing with, and basically one is Swiss Steel, Ugitech, which is where it comes in. They melt that in northern France. The reason we like that is because it's, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, they basically mothballed it. Something happened, and then Swiss Steel bought the place back out, and they made it a modern factory. So it's only a 5-year-old factory. So they have all the new stuff. They have ways. They sit down there and they run nitrogen over their blast furnaces and stuff so it won't absorb garbage out of the air, all of those kinds of things. They run everything through a vacuum. They use a spectrometer to figure out what the material is before they pour the ingots, all of this kind of thing. And so they do a pretty good job, but we still, even with their stock, we still have places you have hard spots and soft spots in the steel. We end up dealing with that. and there's not much we get to do but live with that. And it doesn't matter there. The other one is North American Stainless. We're getting into those guys there. They use the new process as well. A lot of their stuff is old steel. They remelt old steel and make it into what you could use for rifle barrels. And at the same time, newer product, newer process. You don't have to worry about it. Well, we built your steel and it was 98 degrees outside and 115 degrees humidity and God knows what else fell into the pot, and so you can have differences, and it happens, and there's barrel companies out there that literally went out of business because they got bad steel,
Yeah.
So it's really tough. So we are very particular on what we get. We're very particular on what we use. Anything in there'll be times you'll be drilling if it's soft. In one spot, hard in another spot, and a lot of people think, okay, well, the whole bar is. Well, no, it's actually spots in the bar that are hard and soft. It isn't just all the way around. So you can actually, with the style of cutting that we use, and sometimes you catch this in drilling, it's just too far off. Throw it out.
Are you monitoring the drill speed, and that's how you determine hard and soft spots? Or
No. The only way, the best way we can look at that, the way that we end up finding, you can go in there and we could look at getting a machine that would do this. All the materials is already X-rayed. It's all sonic pinged, which is supposed to keep it within it should be within this certain Rockwell hardness. But still,
stuff
things
slips
get
by.
through. Still, things slip by because they're not.
And
it
at what
isn't
point in
that
the process
precise.
do you detect it?
We can detect it in any of the processes. Obviously, the best would be to know it was bad before we started,
Yeah.
but that's not happening. So usually, most of the time, it's found in the drilling process.
No.
Yeah, if you got a hard spot on one side, it's going to make the drill veer. It's just going to do that. And so if it's too far out, and we don't like that, straight holes are awesome. And that's the best to use, and we just don't like to go too far out. It's sometimes we keep those if we're qualifying new cutters for the head or something like that, and we'll go in there and cut it and make sure that our head's right, and then throw it in a scrap bucket. Actually, we bend them in a U because we've had guys go down to the scrappers there and pick the barrels out of the pile, so now they get them all in a U shape.
Nice.
So that, I don't want anybody using something out there that they're going to get hurt with, even if they're not supposed to be doing what they're doing. But anyway, that's one of the places we find it. We'll find it sometimes in lapping. If it's got a soft spot in there, then the hole will ream a little larger, and you go in there to lap it out. The rest of it's lapped out. You got a part that didn't. It's probably soft in there, so out the door it goes. You can't make a bigger caliber because you still have the same bad spot. The next is obviously with the isometric cutting heads that we have. If it's a much softer. If it's more than about one Rockwell, it will start making the groove deeper. So, we go in
One
there.
Rockwell? That's
Yeah, it's almost nothing.
Yeah.
So you really have a hard time holding that. The only really good thing is the steel that we use. When we get a Rockwell test on it, not only do we have a surface outside, but we have a middle and we have a center. So, when we go in there, usually the center is the softest part of the barrel. The outside's going to be the hardest because it takes the most of the heat treating. But about 1.5 Rockwell, you can see that. It will show up. And it's just when you go down there and you measure the grooves, it'll just be big in one spot. I have no idea what other people do, but the idea is to build precision barrels. If we can't do that, there's no reason for me to take that piece of steel. It is done right there. And it happens. Sometimes you get, steel comes in 24-foot blank bars. There's 10 barrels, in a 28-inch blanks, and you can have all 10 of them be bad, or you can have one be bad. You don't really know at the end or whatever. It matters on where your steel comes out of the production line. All kinds of things can vary that. But the bottom line is, it's still really whatever we do there doesn't really matter if we go in there and the barrel internal dimensions are not within specification. It has absolutely no use for me or anybody else. Or I don't think so. I would assume if we were making 30 caliber machine gun barrels and you had something that was 2/10 bigger in one groove for an inch, they're already looking for 6 inches at 300 yards, or 7 inches is the smallest group they want. So that would be the place you would alleviate that into. Yeah, so it goes through there. It can even come up that when we machine the outside, because we're really old school on what we do there. We use really sharp cutters, induce absolutely no stress in the barrel, possibly relieve a little bit in there. We've actually had it where you'll be turning it and you'll see a hard spot on the outside, and you can be down to this size here, down to 700 thousandths. And then a hard spot shows up that you didn't catch on the inside and the outside. And the problem with that is it causes the same damn problem. Nothing's consistent. Tough to tune. You can get them to shoot, but sometimes, it's just not worth it. It's just pain in the butt.
Speaking of that, too, there's those 2.7 PRCs that Jake and Ryan took to the Night Force ELR Steel Challenge, or whatever they called it.
Yep.
You guys made those barrels, I'm sure, same lot of steel, probably one right after the other.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I chambered them myself, and I got the chambers so consistent that the brass was interchangeable, which, is not terribly hard to do. You got to fuss a little. Mm-hmm. Yet even with that, they were in the same guns, painted similarly, same chassis, everything as same as you can be. Yet one gun liked one load and one gun liked another.
Mm-hmm.
And
different powders, yeah.
Different powders for the same bullet. And
Yep.
so what makes... those barrels were as identical as could possibly be, yet they wanted different loads. And do you know what goes into that? What are we not able to capture in this process that'll cause that?
Well, every time you look at it, regardless of, what kind of cutters you use or anything like that, if you cut, let's say one of those barrels was the cutter was brand new sharp, and actually in this case here, I know that they weren't, because the first barrel is usually not as consistent as number 2 and number 3 on the cutter. So those were number 2 and number 3. Still there's a little bit of wear on the tool, even though you can make them everything the same size. It's really not totally 100% the same surface finish on the inside. When you get down to the level that everything's going to happen in 3 microseconds. It's all got to happen exactly the same, and everything has to be perfectly the same, when basically they're still, even though they came out of the same bar, they're still 2 different pieces of steel.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we control that? We work as hard as we can to control that, but that still doesn't mean it. We've had guys that have had really good results, and being able to chamber up 3, 4, 5 barrels, use the same load, the same overall. And then we've had guys that, why? We go in there and we look at the numbers and everything. There may be a little bit of difference. But, at this point here, since you're looking at the pressures and they exponentially build, will 20 millionths of an inch do the difference?
Mm-hmm. Wow.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So how do we control that, to that extent? Nobody's really been able to do that. It doesn't matter if we're looking at button rifle barrels, as they can vary, even broach barrels, which you would think would be pretty consistent. And there's companies that use those out there, and they are, but it still comes down to the steel could be a little bit different.
Yeah.
It may change things a little bit. Everything could change it. Yeah, it'd be nice to make everything perfectly and exactly the same, and you go out and say, here's your gun, shoot this load in it this long. We built 50 of them in a row. They all shoot that. But as you well know, that would be a pipe dream. That's actually a pipe dream for a barrel maker.
Yeah.
Have everything exactly the same every time. That when you get that, that it's going to be there. We work towards that, but it may be an unachievable goal at that level. I don't know.
It wouldn't be fun if it was perfect.
Yeah.
Well, technically it wouldn't be. Yeah.
It would no longer be fun because you didn't have to work very hard for it.
Interesting part on that gun is his was faster out of the gate, like 50 feet, 60 feet per second faster.
Mm-hmm.
But when we tried to slow it down, it went to hell. But when we changed the powder, it actually about the exact same speed. They're about identical in group size.
Oh, okay.
But at the same powder, his wanted to outrun mine by 50, 60 feet per second.
Well, they actually had one of the stages at the competition. They had a shot marker, and it was about 1,000 yards.
It's exactly 1,000 yards.
It was exactly 1,000 yards. So you had to fire as a team. You had to fire both rifles through the shot marker at the target, and then the total sum of the group size was how you scored between the 2 rifles, basically. And I think we were 1.5 MOA, something like that, but for 10 shots between the 2 rifles.
That's not bad for a couple of young guys.
It is.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Wait till they get some experience,
Yeah.
Brian.
Yeah, shit.
That'll be a lot better.
We might go from 1.5 to 1.4.
1.4. See,
Well,
you're
the reason we're laughing is because the card just cut out on us there, so we're jumping back in. And I was just saying how, obviously, after listening to Mark throughout this podcast, you guys understand the hoops that they jump through to only give you the highest quality barrel product for the consumer, and that's why we use their barrels. Since we started using your barrels, not only do the guys love cutting those. I know, Blaine, you're not cutting much anymore.
No, but they sure dial in quick.
But they dial in.
I mean, it's just
they cut like butter. And if any of you gunsmiths want to try a barrel out there, just reach out to us, and you can experience the same thing.
Yeah, and I highly suggest you go watch the YouTube video on their process.
Yeah, we did a real nice. It was actually one of the first videos our guy Luke did, but it was a very nice overview of their facility. It shows the hand lapping and pouring the lead slugs.
Oh yeah.
All that good stuff, and it was eye opening for me just to see how the barrels. You have some idea if you're a mechanical type of guy, you would have some idea about how it's done, but to actually see it done in person was definitely an experience. So, and most of that was captured in that video. So go check it out. YouTube, Shoot to Hunt.
And we also need to discuss the fluted barrel pre and after.
Yeah. So during that, we had them make 2 identical barrels.
Mm-hmm.
What did we do with the 2?
We fluted one.
We fluted the living daylights out of one. You were telling me what's the most radical fluting.
It was
I said,
diamond.
as much as you can cut out of it.
And they measured all the boring.
Well, diamond
diameter.
specifically because they rotate one direction and cut in one direction, then they rotate the other direction, cut that direction.
But they did internal measurements before and after.
Yeah. And I believe we determined it was no more than a single tenth of additional induced runout.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole bunch. We kind of expect that. You should get that out of good quality steel.
Yeah.
And that's part of that.
And that was a Sporter 3, which is a
3.
7.700 muzzle finish. And I think we were just at the 26-inch length because we have that other one in there now, and it's 26.
Yeah, and that one shot, I think it was a 300 PRC and shot either 212s or 215s, 2.75 inches at 650, just under 2,900 feet per second.
Nice.
So, yeah, it was right in there.
Nice.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
And now I do get a question. Guys will ask, they'll see something we did that's a fluted barrel we Cerakoted, and I'm like, oh, that looks so nice. My rifle shoots fantastic. Should I get it fluted?
No.
And I always tell guys, anything that's shooting well,
No.
just leave it alone.
You know how many rifles have been fucked up by tinkering with them?
Yeah, I know somebody.
This guy.
I remember that one.
That's a pretty common thing, though. Like you said, here you got this thing that shoots really, really good, and now you want to do what?
Yeah.
The answer is leave it alone. Shoot it out.
Well, they
Wear
always
it out
start off
get
and
another one.
they know what their answer is because they say it the same way. I have this right. They'll talk all about the rifle and how well it shoots. And then at the end of it, they say, but I really like fluting. Should I do it? And they already know the fucking answer.
Oh, that's goes the same with like plus P, and you're like, no, you're there.
Yeah, it's fucking hammering the 100 feet per second up front. Yes, it's nice. Add it up front. But if you're already hammering, the difference between 2,900 and 3,000, the elk don't give a shit.
No.
Yeah,
really
they
doesn't.
actually, I'd never seen anybody in physics class. There was no elk in physics class at all.
Yeah.
So they really don't care what's going on there. And they're more interested in not getting shot than getting shot, I would assume. And it matters. There's a lot of guys out there educating by missing them, too, by the way. But
I've never seen an elk in physics.
Never had one.
Yeah.
They just know they're there, and the next minute they're not if you do your job.
I never thought I'd meet a guy that would walk in somewhere. So imagine this, Mark, that you bring a bunch of goats with you, you pack a bunch of shit in, you walk in 7 miles, and he describes it as this hellhole. He's got this once in a...
The worst place I've probably ever hunted.
It took him 8 years to get the tag. He walks all the way in there, and there's this assortment of enormous bull elk that he can shoot. And he spends 4 or 5 days there in negative sub-zero temperatures and decides not to shoot one of those because he could potentially get one that was 20 inches bigger. That's this guy right here. Yeah, so now...
So I'm going back to the hellhole.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're going back? Well, from an age standpoint, the best is when there's a cut bank and the elk's above it, and your pickup truck's right below it, and you shoot the bastard.
Rolls down and
right
falls
in
in the truck.
Yeah.
That's the best, but it doesn't sound like that's going to work for you. So,
No.
if you're starting to hate that a little bit, you are getting a little bit of age on you.
There you
now.
go.
You're getting a little bit of that
It
smarts there.
definitely, I am dreading. It's not the walk in. It's just 7 miles walk out uphill is what I'm dreading.
Oh.
Then you put an elk in the mix, or 2 elk, because there's 2 of us. Ooh, it's going to be rough.
Need a helicopter.
Yeah.
No, just need the private land guy to let us cut through, but he ain't about that life.
Oh, Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to get it, I guess it's the hard way.
We got questions. I don't know. We keep going. Anything else?
Are you good? Dial them in.
Yeah, because we're already way over an hour, and I know Mark's got to get back to that 338 barrel and that barrel for Blaine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's two.
Barrels.
Now it's
barrels
two.
for Blaine,
Yep.
All right, let me go back in here.
I'll
open
just take
this
and
up.
set that on Nathan's desk and say, do this.
Yeah.
That works
Nice.
for me.
It's nice to have a guy. Nice.
It is. Put that in the schedule now.
Oh, God, there's a lot more questions now.
Go ahead. Just rip them off.
Oh, hey, it's in the threads. I don't have them like written down because I kept going. Let's see. Good Lord. It says, and this has already been answered. When will 6mm and 224 barrels be available to purchase at or Ace? They're available, correct?
22's always been available.
22 has been available
Yep.
since we've even talked to you guys. It's just not, and it's starting to show up a little bit because, like I said, the 22 Hark, and we're starting to
that'll
get
help.
a little bit of that.
And 26 mil is on the shelves right now.
And when we already discussed this, but we'll bring it up again. Will you ever make a 25 cal barrel?
Yep. Yeah, that is going to be next. Actually, we were, a lot of the tooling, some of the tooling takes a while that we can't build and insert in-house. Takes a while to get.
Probably
So
middle
it's
of next
already
year,
in there.
feasibly. Middle
Yeah,
of next year.
it's going to be probably somewhere around the middle of next year. I'm sure that it'll be out in I'm thinking in the May, but technically we're already gathering most of the stuff now. To be able to drill the holes. And
Nice.
the big one is getting all of that. The gun drills are actually very easy to come by. Reamers are tough to get good ones. And some
Start
other
to
parts of the
finish.
machine.
Start to finish. Total touch time to manufacture a barrel with a contour. Total touch time, start
Okay,
to finish.
That does vary a little bit by what it is.
Average it.
Yeah, if we're sitting down there, we're looking at about 3 hours.
3 hours to construct a steel barrel from a bare rod all the way into a shootable barrel. What is taking these fucking manufacturers 15 months to fill a fucking barrel order? What could possibly in a business mindset?
Question. Good question.
What could possibly take you fucking 15 months? Are they waiting on steel? Like
I don't
what is
know if
going on?
they're waiting on steel or they just have that many orders. You look at a lot of these, and I don't know the recent numbers, but if we go back 5 or 6, maybe 7 years, Krager only put out 7,000 barrels a year.
So as a
And
businessman,
they've got like 20-some people.
as a businessman owning a barrel manufacturing facility, at what point, if you know that what do we say you're making 100 a month? Mm-hmm. So at what point, how many months of orders would you have to see? How many months back order would you need to see before you decided to increase your capacity?
I don't like the idea of being any more than 6 to 8 weeks out.
Okay, so we hit
And that's what
8
I'm
weeks of
trying to do.
orders,
Yeah.
and then it moves to 12, and then you're really crunching. You guys are running full speed. It moves to 16. At what point do you increase capacity?
No. We would already increase capacity. If we're looking at it, we are I actively watch for people who would be somebody who would have the temperament and the mindset to be able to do the work in there. Mm-hmm. And they become harder to find because, well, frankly, it's somewhat demanding job.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have them on a lot of room.
No.
You don't get to make mistakes. They got to understand that if there is a mistake and they made it, it's like, hey, I made a mistake, and go, okay, what'd you do? And we figure out what you did and move on from there. Mm-hmm. And so we don't get anything out the door that's bad or
Exactly.
potentially dangerous, for God's sakes. I mean, you can even have that. So, I always look at that safety thing as practically utmost of all things when we make barrels. But if we got to, I would say 10 weeks, we would be seriously looking for somebody by then if we don't already have somebody.
I don't know what these other guys are doing. And then we're starting to learn about the stock manufacturing process now and the actual cost of things. Mm-hmm. And it's boggling our fucking minds. Until you physically pursue your own stock design to be made by an existing manufacturer, you don't understand what goes into it. And our eyes, not only through you about barrels, but also through stockies about stocks. Mm-hmm. It's pretty eye-opening, like why this industry deals with the extended lead times and ever-increasing pricing coming out of nowhere. It's
I think it just carries over from the ammo shortages. They think they can do it, so they just continue to do it.
It's the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I think that we can say this because this is all backed up, so we can just jump onto that pile and say we're backed up because barrels are hard to get and metal's hard to get.
Yeah.
I think that they don't actually have that problem, but they lean on that problem hard.
They're just making shit up. Was it you and I, Blaine, that were just talking? You talked about that you have been buying stocks from Macmillan for 30 years, and they have always carried a 6-month lead time.
Yeah, 4 to 6 month lead time.
Why?
Yeah, I guess they wanted to have a good order file in case things slowed down. But
that's always a lovely thing to have in manufacturing is sit down there because, we're now getting back after, 8 or 9 years of everything wide open, no lull in like June, July, and August or whatever. Yeah. And then this year here there was a slowdown in that. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So, having that 3-month backlog makes it so you
the only thing that feels that it's still short from COVID is primers.
Yeah.
Primers in general are still the thing that has simply not made a comeback.
And some powders, too.
Yeah.
Side note, you said that, correct me if I'm wrong, that primers are also regulated by SAAMI?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. They're all regulated. Well, there's some regulation. They have a certain amount of bristolance that the primer should have, to make it in there. But when it really comes down to it, regardless of who's making them for them or if they're making them themselves, they all have a different recipe. I can't tell you how many different formulations they have for primer material. It must be, I know if you look at what Federal's done, I think they've had 70 or 80 of them over the last 50 years. They change things that matters on what you can, what you can't get, what you're going to use it for, and they all do that. I mean, when people sit down there and look at primers being all the same, the answer is there isn't one large rifle primer that has the same bristolance numbers or how powerful it is. Not one of them,
And it definitely doesn't help the situation with Hornady. Hornady was producing their own primers. I don't know what the situation is now, but their place just blew up.
Yeah, they had that. They had a death there. It was kind of it's a big thing. They actually had that plant, and they mothballed it for like 3 years, and they brought it back out here recently. From what I understand, is the primer production they were using, it was about 15% of the primers they use. So, it's probably going to slow certain things down because 15% is going to show up.
Oh, a lot of them.
It's going to show up.
Definitely.
But it shouldn't, from a standpoint of getting ammunition out and stuff, it shouldn't, it's not going to be crippling to the industry. It shouldn't be. But it's still a bad thing, and primers are just nasty stuff.
Well, the two big ones are Federal and CCI that was owned by Vista Outdoor, and Vista Outdoor just sold all of that to a foreign
guy out of I believe Croatia.
Yes.
Where he's out of. I don't know if they got an approved loan.
You don't know
from the
that it's
government.
approved yet.
I don't know.
Okay.
If it's been
God, I would
approved
imagine there's going to be a lot of checks and balances.
I swear, though, it seems that ever since and shortly before, we haven't seen. Of course, Midway just got some and whatnot, but there hasn't been really any delivery of Federal or CCI primers through the wholesale loop.
Right.
In
Very
many,
little.
many months.
Very, very little. There's a lot of them.
And then all of a sudden you heard that they were selling out. So
yeah, I'm not quite sure why they did. I kind of do because that again, Federal was not owned. Federal just didn't own Federal. I mean, it was owned by somebody else, and I think they want to dump it, but I don't know why.
Yeah,
one of the major things. Well, it's crazy. You think about it now.
Maybe liability and regulations, and it could have been a number of things.
Yeah, it's hard to say, what it's all about. But with what's going on now, when you look at the Ukraine and you look at what's happening over there in Israel right now, will the DoD say, "Gee, we're going to sell ammunition manufacturing to an outside entity"? I got a feeling they might not make it.
Yeah. Especially if those are the only primers we're making in the States. Yeah.
Okay, back on the questions. This is for UM and Ace. Approximately when will prefits be available? Will the 223 prefits Tikka? When will there be 223 prefits Tikkas, of course?
We can make them now, and Ace is going to be making them soon. And this is now, again, this is November 7th, 2023.
This is Blaine's here. This is a good one, too, for Blaine and Mark. Is there any value in clocking a barrel pointed up, i.e. the max runout at 12 o'clock when installed?
That wasn't a good question.
I typically do, just because there's a couple different ways to chamber a barrel. You chamber through the headstock and you dial the throat and the breech, or the the bat machine way, the Bruce way, where you hold the muzzle. You cut the muzzle first, get that straight, and then drill and pre-bore. I don't know how much difference it makes, because when you talk about clocking, there's two factors. There's the straightness of the hole drilled through it, and then any of the barrel bending a little bit or warping or twisting. And I know you can talk about that, about how I know this, for a long time I thought that when I was clocking them up, I was really clocking them down, and vice versa, because I thought the barrel was bent, and Mark said, no, they're not bent, it's the straightness of the hole. And so I was clocking them opposite. It doesn't seem to matter. All the ones I've done have shot really well. I guess the theory is that if it's up or down, as the load increases, it's going to go higher and lower, but it's going to do that anyway. So I guess I got a big, I don't know. Some guys do, some guys don't.
Basically, it doesn't matter.
I don't know if it matters or not. What's your view on that?
It would, in the case if we were looking at something that the hole that was in there was actually that crooked, it would show up there. And that does happen from time to time. I've seen that myself, chambered barrels for years. And if you got a really crooked one, and I mean, you would be able to blame anybody who would look down there and say, "Oh shit, that barrel's crooked."
If you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel,
yeah, and
then there's a
actually
fucking
they're
problem.
definitely there. You look there and you only see half of a round circle at the other end. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
it's bent. But or that's when
Drilled
it was
crooked.
Drilled crooked. It could even be drilled crooked. So you would see something there, because you would either have a right or a left. That would be noticeable from dead zero on absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So sitting down there, and I have to say, I don't know how much it affects when most things are in a position where they're really good, the barrel's really good. Does it? Can it have a little bit of arc to it? It most certainly can. Most of them do, but how much? When we sit down there and we drill a hole from the breech to the muzzle, basically what we're doing, and you go to the far end and you put a gauge pin in the end of there, and you put a indicator on it, which we do with absolutely every barrel we drill and ream. We do that with it, and it runs out 0.002 in 28 inches. How crooked can it be?
Mm-hmm. That's almost nothing.
Yeah, even from a standpoint of long-range shooting, it would be hard. But I understand, what Blaine's talking about. And there's other things, and I know we talked about this.
He's not talking about the barrels with 2,000s. He's talking about the ones with a lot more.
If you guys, that's right. You would have to have a lot more there. You'd have
He
to have
saw
something.
a half moon down when he stared down the barrel.
Yeah, you're gonna see a difference there, because let's face it, it's way out.
Mm.
But you don't see that in really good quality barrels. It doesn't show up very much.
I know this too.
Is that a gunsmith asket or just a shooter?
Got somebody on the right
Yeah,
side.
I mean, it doesn't matter how straight they appear in terms of how they shoot. It doesn't.
That's the real answer.
That's the real
So-
answer. Guys, have,
If you have a barrel 2,000 run out, 5,000 run out,
That's over the whole length of the barrel.
That potentially could be less accurate than one with 50,000 run out.
no, it's
Well, it could be.
well, yeah. I don't
I mean,
know.
have you seen that?
No,
Have
well,
you seen anybody here seen that?
all I've seen is, and another major big name gunsmith said the same thing. It just doesn't matter how well the barrel shoots. We used to get excited because when you dial it in at the throat and the breech, you get that 3 inches of it perfectly straight, or straight within a couple tenths at least, and then the muzzle runs out a little bit, and it doesn't seem to make any difference how much that muzzle runs out. And part of it could be you go, well, okay, you bent the barrel a little bit, which you could, but then as you develop your skills, you're not bending the barrel. It's a thick barrel. And so that probably has to be the hole isn't drilled quite concentric through the blank, I guess. All I know is when it comes to how they shoot, there is no correlation. Guys would get excited. Wow, this barrel only has, the muzzle run out is only 2 or 3 thousandths. It doesn't make any difference if it's that or 60 thousandths.
In fact, when you did the two barrels for us on the 7 PRCs, one had slightly more than the other.
And I wouldn't tell you. I said,
Yeah, you wouldn't tell us who was who.
and
but it never
the
mattered.
The less fussy barrel had more run out in it.
Yeah, mine was pretty simple with 2 different loads.
Yeah,
Jake's was
and
a
yours
little
had more,
of a
whether it
problem
was the
child.
hole, which I guess it was the hole probably wasn't drilled quite as straight as the other one.
It can be that. It mostly can be that. I mean, like I said, it's a different piece of steel, and you can have little things that can cause you
We
grief.
literally need to have a question of the week, and then just have Mark and Blaine come in every couple weeks and just bang out like 10 of them. It'd be fantastic.
Don't
Would you
know.
be up for that?
Oh yeah, I'd be up for that.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, you bet.
Okay.
What else you got?
Have you ever seen a barrel go 20K plus rounds without cleaning, maintaining a high level of accuracy?
20,000?
No.
This is, well, there's a guy that could tell you you're wrong.
I know him,
Yeah.
but he's got the one fucking barrel in the entire world.
2. He has an AR and a 308.
You know, I've seen over the years that you have a barrel and they'll be out there. Varmint shooters, it was really common, you know, especially 20 years ago, that the throats were just roasted out of them, and the dang thing still shot.
The
You know,
real
and-
point is that how many
Why?
guys on the planet are actually shooting 20,000 rounds through the same barrel?
None. I mean, there's such a low
We know
percentage.
one guy.
And
It
what
doesn't
level
matter.
of accuracy do you want? You know, I always go to bench rest accuracy, and the answer is not no. It's hell no, and you're an idiot to think otherwise, because we've watched groups open up as the barrel fouls. However, I was ticked off when my bench rest gun shooting 10-shot groups went from a 4 to a 9. I did it as an experiment, and they chewed my ass for doing it during a match, because it was a 30 cal, it was a 300 WSM, and it shot in the 4s up until, or thereabouts. I mean, there's always variation, but it shot a 9 from round 70 to 80. I went back and cleaned it, and it was back to shooting 4s again. And so I've actually seen that. Now, if my hunting gun goes from shooting a 4-inch 10-shot group at 1,000 to a 9-inch, do I care? Am I even going to notice? No. And I think that's is a level of accuracy. And so practically, and the answer I always say is clean your barrel every 50 to 100 rounds. If you really want to go until the action drops off, well, go ahead. But are you going to be out there? You haven't cleaned the barrel in 300 rounds. You got the bull of a lifetime at 1,100 yards. How confident are you that you're going to be able to hit? I mean, is it going to bug you in the back of mind because you didn't clean your barrel? If it's not, you're probably okay. But it's just one of those things.
The cleaning thing is a question on here, but we actually need to go back and listen to our last podcast because he broke down what their cleaning method was or wasn't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, on the Tikkas, as soon as they figured out you guys were doing the Tikka thing, it's been on here like 7 times. The shank, will it be 1.13?
Yes.
I thought we were
Yes.
doing 1.17.
We're doing on the Tikka
Prefits.
Sporter contour, which is the identical Tikka
To
contour.
the factory? Okay.
It will be identical. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's what, you know, and of course we got a couple of takeoffs from you guys, you know,
Yeah.
on the Sporter barrel. And when we thought about that a lot, and I know we talked a little bit, Blaine, about the 1-inch 170, you know, versus what it is.
Which looks fine on them.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we want them to be able to take a factory Tikka rifle and replace the barrel.
yeah.
replace
then
the
it needs
barrel,
to be.
Leave it in
and then
the
it's
same
going to
stock.
have to be that way. What we
Yeah.
are going to do, and it's going to be a very small modification, is the half inch that will basically be outside the action, which is about all we got to play with, will be parallel. It will not affect anything with it going into the barrel,
No.
but it'll make the guy putting it on very happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something
It's,
grabbed
you know,
onto, yeah.
You have at least something that's firm in the same size.
Yeah.
That's always the problem when you get into like Tikkas and, like I said, you know, hammer forged or rotoforged barrels. You know, they basically roll those things out there and they go straight to a polisher. And, you know, the 180 or probably 100 grit or maybe even 80 grit. Burn that off of there, and then they burn her over there in 120, and that baby's heading off to get threads in the chamber in it.
On those like Tikka Seiko barrels, are Scandinavian barrels, hammer forged, are they getting their own steel from locally? Or is that
I would think that they're getting them out of wherever. I mean, you know that there's limited companies that build 416R stainless steel. They're not everybody does, and actually the companies we deal with for stainless steel don't build anything but stainless steel. So, you know, I would think that they're using one of the foundries over there someplace in Europe. There's a bunch of steelmakers in northern France, Germany area, and they all do really, really good work. Some is a little harder than others. Usually in Europe, their barrels are more apt to be 31, 32 Rockwell. We're really looking around here at, you know, a lot of them even down to 26. I don't know. That's a little bit soft. You know, our equipment likes 28, 29. It's easier on tools. You get a little more longevity. The tunability of the barrel is a little easier. You know, you get a 32 Rockwell barrel that's 500 at the muzzle. Believe me, they can be a pain because of the stiffness. It's hard to tune. You know. So we look at all of those things. That's just more like that 28, 29 is right where we like to be.
All right, 2 more. One's just telling you something. I didn't see a list of bore groove dimensions, land configurations, and twist rates offered for the various bore sizes on your website. That could be helpful. Somebody just saying that.
Well, twist rates are infinite because of CNC, correct?
Right. Yeah. Twist rates are infinite. We can sit down there, and I don't know exactly what you want to do, but obviously, when we build something that isn't what we consider a standard, i.e., like a 219 bore, 218 and a 22 has been pretty standard. 219 are very popular with the real long, heavy bullets. The end of the barrel will be marked that way. If there's stuff like that isn't on our website, it's still not on there yet because I've been working my son who does all the web internet stuff, like a horse. He's
well, basically it's 6 Ballard rifling for all that. I think that's in our product description. And then as far as twist rates are concerned, if you want to custom order a barrel, the twist rates are in where we sell the barrels. You're buying it in the twist rate that's displayed because you're choosing it. Otherwise, it's CNC twist rate. So if you order a custom barrel, it can literally be any twist rate that you want. It can be 7.25.
Exactly, yes. Or 7.2.
So it can be anything.
We can cut to 100. But, that's another thing I'd love to talk about is 6mm barrels. I think we could spend an hour and a half doing nothing but 6mm barrels. Because when we were doing our stuff there, and of course twist rate come up, 7.5, 8, 7, 7's getting to be pretty fast when you look at it from a percentage standpoint.
Yeah,
I'm not so sure. And Hornady puts out, like for the 6, they put out a 7.7 twist for theirs, and I think that's more geared to like the 105, 107s than the 115. The big ones.
And we shoot 103s, 105s typically in bench rest, and it's usually an 8 because that seems to work.
Yeah.
And I don't see that being a problem. I think, like I said, the reason why Hornady did the 7.7 is I think you can run the
a little bit longer bullets.
Well, a lot of it when we ran the 7.5s and you're using the 105s, the 107s and stuff, they didn't shoot as well as the bigger bullets.
But no, all those really long. But you and I talked the other day about this too, that somebody wanted to make an 8.6 blackout and wanted a 3-twist barrel.
I think that's standard.
Yeah, and then I forget what you said. You weren't impressed with the 3-twist, or?
Well, I don't know why they're doing it, and I would only think that they're doing that is to make the powder burn correctly.
That's right.
It's one of the big problems is, are you getting enough pressure, enough resistance in the barrel to make the powder burn correctly? And I think that's one of the reasons why that works, because from a stability standpoint, it's not necessary at all.
No. Yeah, it is a powder thing. It's a minimal amount of powder with a gigantic bullet. Yeah. And they want a super short barrel. So it all comes down to that. Like Faxon is making, I think, the most 8.6.
But you could just make it a tighter groove diameter on it and get the same thing, couldn't you? Slower twist, tighter groove.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, and this is kind of we were talking about this here the other day in the lunchroom. Was that for the blackout? Do you need a bore diameter of 330 to be able to turn that bullet? Because it's really not, you're not scorching this thing down the road. And that's one reason to have a lot of rifling in there is to make sure that it grips. Well, we're not going to have a problem gripping because thing's going to make it be doing $1,000 by the time it gets to the end of a 9-inch barrel. Should the bore diameter be, let's say, 334, and have only 2,000ths worth of rifling in there. But again, if the reason for the 1 and 3 twist is for resistance, the answer would be what Blaine said would be, instead of making it 338.0, maybe we make it 337.8 or 7, something like that. Make it a few 10,000ths tighter. The big thing when you do that is it's got to make sure it's going for what it's going for, because somebody says, oh well, let's work really good on my blackout. I'm going to make a
338 edge out of it.
338 edge or whatever, and find out that one case is still in there. Still in the gun to this day,
Last question. The guy PM me, I'm paraphrasing because he wrote me a book, but basically it's on carbon ring. The catchphrase carbon ring. He goes, you go back 20 years, he said, I don't remember people talking about carbon rings. Is it a thing? Is it a powder thing? People are shooting more? Is it made up? What is a carbon ring to you, Mark?
Well, we run into some of this, and especially in the 6mm, because we went to some really slow powders, H1000 and that kind of thing. And with the high-speed photography, you can actually see grains of powder going out the end of the barrel. You're not even burning it all. So if you're making it, if it's that dirty, if it's not combusting the powder correctly, you're going to get something like a carbon ring because that's where it's the heat is at, and it stops there, and you are going to get a carbon ring. And the reason for it is you got a lot of unburnt powder. You're now seeing some shooting ranges. I've known about 3 of them here in the United States that actually have chemical fires right out in front of the firing line because there's so much unburnt powder out there. And it migrates into the dirt, and it gets into there, and something sets it off, whatever that might be, a spark. It could be from like maybe a muzzle loader or a black powder gun. Will set it off, and it's like, water don't put it out. It makes it a hell of a lot worse. You got to have basically, a proper chemical fire extinguisher to put the damn thing out. Well, why are we getting that now? And I think a lot of times people are looking at the slower powders to get that consistency as far as velocity and everything, but we may not be burning nearly enough of it. Because, I'm sure you've all heard it. Guys were using the 260 and they were shooting 4350 in there. They were suppressed. They had to watch it because their suppressors would fill full of carbon. Well, the idea behind smokeless powder was not to have that kind of crap out there. It was supposed to be mostly consumed, 97% or maybe even higher consumed. If you run slow enough powders, you may not be consuming it all, so it's going to go someplace. And so a carbon ring is a very real thing. I've seen them in barrels. I've seen some really nasty ones in barrels.
How do you get them out of your barrel?
ISO.
Yeah.
Right out.
Yeah. Well, anything that you can come up with as a carbon buster product that would work.
I've even
best.
heard of guys running a reamer back in there by hand to knock the carbon ring off. Yeah. They're doing it.
Yeah, they are doing it because sometimes the ring is actually in the throat.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're right after the throat. Those are the real bearers.
I found if you clean them every 50 to 100 rounds and occasionally use ISO with their hard nylon brushes or thorough clean, which may be simpler to use, you just don't have a problem with that. Now, the guy shooting 20,000 rounds, I don't know what his carbon ring looks like. I don't know if he has one or what, but...
He didn't shoot 20,000 rounds.
Yeah, well,
that is a bunch of ammo.
Not him. I'm talking about the guy that asked the question.
Oh, no, he was just saying everything's a carbon ring problem now. I don't...
Well, also we got bore scopes now. We didn't know. 20 years ago, bore scope, I mean, that Hawkeye is about the same price 20 years ago as it is now. And I think that was the first one.
Yeah, well, carbon ring is not a ninja. You're going to see it.
Yeah. But you have to have a bore scope.
It's not a ninja?
It's not a ninja. You're going to see it if you look down the fucking hole.
But we didn't have bore scopes readily available. And now you can get a test long for $60.
I think when the plug's in the bottom of your iPhone.
Yeah.
And now the iPhone's got a USB-C. There's probably more of them available now that it has a C in it.
And so you probably had carbon rings forever. We're just now noticing it.
Yeah, and I know we used to run into that a lot. In the earlier 338 projects that goes quite a ways back, and we were using cannon powders. You could get WC 860, 872, IMAR 5010, which is really rice kernels. I don't know if you ever use that, but they're big. And you would get carbon rings when you were putting them in smaller cartridges, 338s and stuff like that. You would get carbon rings to the point you couldn't load a bullet in there. And it's just because the powder's slow and it builds up a carbon ring. Well, technically it won't do that on everything, so it's really a deal of, those slow powders work, but one of the downsides to it, carbon rings.
And the answer is cleaning.
And the answer is really cleaning. Yeah.
Shoot it out.
If you got some shit in your butt, wipe your butt.
Yeah, there you go.
Just drag it on the carpet.
Well, we appreciate you very much, Mark, for coming on again.
It was fun.
And as always, wealth of information.
We could have went 3 hours.
Yeah. Well, luckily you're a local resource. We could have you on again.
Yeah,
that would be great. Anytime you get guys that have questions that we want to come in here and discuss, I have no problem doing that. I'm sure Blaine is right there with it. And
perfect.
And we can do it whenever it strikes your fancy. I know it's hunting season now, so
yeah, it's getting rough. Anything else?
Good to go.